Hello and welcome to the Exam Study Experts podcast. Have you ever struggled to finish a big project, an extended assignment, a thesis or dissertation? Procrastination is a huge challenge when it comes to these kinds of heavyweight, long-form academic projects, and today's interview is here to help. Today's guest is a true expert who really gets it. We're going to walk with you alongside the challenges you have. You're going to feel heard, my friends, because today's guest really understands the sorts of things you're going through when procrastination strikes on these kinds of major academic projects. And most importantly, we're going to give you the tools to do something about it and move forward. What sets her apart from a lot of productivity experts, particularly procrastination experts? There are some great people out there, but there's an awful lot of people that say they know about procrastination that have really just kind of read a few books and not had a lot of practical experience actually putting things into action and helping people and battle testing what actually works and what doesn't. And Alison, today's guest, is the real deal. She has an enormous amount of experience actually helping people, and she really and truly knows what works and what doesn't. The company she ran for many years, the Dissertation Coach. Between her and her team at the Dissertation Coach, they worked with over 10,000 students and helped them finish their dissertations, theses, research papers, and even books. So it's safe to say she knows what she's talking about. Dr. Alison Miller is also the author of Finish Your Dissertation Once and For All, How to Overcome Psychological Barriers, Get Results and Move On with Your Life, which is an excellent in-depth read on the subject, by the way, especially if you're at university level or beyond. I've titled this podcast, How to Finish Your Dissertation /essay. I think the themes we'll talk about today are relevant to really kind of any form of kind of big academic project. Alison's expertise is particularly at university level, but I'd still encourage listeners to tune in, even if you're not kind of at university level yet, or you've left your university days behind you. Procrastination is a universal theme in academia, and I'm sure you'll recognise some of the themes and find some of the solutions useful. But I particularly suggest picking up her book if you are at university level. Alison also holds a PhD in clinical psychology from the University of Illinois and a bachelor's degree in psychology from Cornell University. I think it's going to be a great and very practical interview. I think you're really going to enjoy hearing from Alison. She's wonderful. There's so many little things that I'm going to take from today's episode and steal and kind of incorporate into my own teaching with accreditation, of course. I'm really excited to introduce her to you. Dr. Alison, a very warm welcome to the show.
I'm so glad to be here. I'm Alison Miller, and I am an academic entrepreneur. So next month will be 25 years since I started offering dissertation coaching services, coaching graduate students to earn doctoral degrees. And that became an entire team of people providing one-on-one coaching and consulting services over the years. And it's been a wonderful thing to be able to help people earn their degrees. When the pandemic began, we responded as an organization by offering a few free co-working sessions to clients of the Dissertation Coach for free as a way to support students in an incredibly isolating time, because grad school is already isolating enough. And that ended up turning into a new business called the Academic Writer Space. And that's a co-working community for academic writers. It's in a remarkable international community of people working on graduate degrees, people who are professors, postdocs, doing all kinds of different challenging academic projects. But the thing that has been so fantastic about it is what a joy it is to learn in this way. I was a dissertation coach for 20 years before the Academic Writer Space, and I feel like I learned infinitely more in the last 5 years of co-working than I did in the prior 20. So I'm excited to talk with you and share some of the essential wisdom that has been born out of the community that's, I think, is incredibly helpful and reassuring.
Fantastic. Well, we're really excited to have you today. A very warm welcome. Thank you so much for coming. I was reading some of your really excellent book in preparation for this, and the depth of your kind of wisdom and experience in this subject is incredibly impressive. So really excited to have the conversation. I wondered if you wanted to start at the beginning. What kind of inspired you to go on this journey and kind of become a dissertation coach in the first place? And perhaps, I don't know, was that kind of related to your own dissertation experience and your own dissertation story?
It really started with the very beginning of graduate school. Day one, I remember feeling a bit panicked about, oh, I'm in grad school now. All of a sudden, all of my fears and insecurities about not being smart enough became greatly amplified. And so I really felt like the classic imposter. I'm an imposter. I tricked them into it. What I thought was, I'm really articulate for some reason, and I can trick people into thinking I'm intelligent with words. That's what I thought. That shaped a lot of how I operated. And one of the consequences in my program, I had to do a master's thesis as part of my PhD journey, was a lot of procrastination, a lot of avoidance, a lot of anxiety, a lot of doing things at the last minute, working with standards that were completely unreasonable, I really had no idea what I was doing. I just thought I was supposed to sit down and write really good prose.
Right.
And understand the process. And toward the end of my master's thesis, I started to do some personal growth work just out of sheer desperation of like, I can't go on like this. This is so miserable, always working up against the deadline and always feeling just chronically worried and anxious. So as I finished up my master's thesis, I started working in a more strategic way, started planning a lot more carefully and thoughtfully, breaking things down in a much more detailed way, which was helpful. But what really made the difference was just one day out of nowhere, I had an epiphany that the reason I was avoiding my work was because I was conflating something is hard right now with I'm not smart and I'm never going to figure this out. And that revelation just kind of started to lead to more awareness, more freedom to make choices independent of my fears. And when I got to the dissertation phase, people around me who knew me were like, how'd you write your proposal so quickly? Like, where's all the drama and angst? Like, what's going on? You seem better. So I started showing people what I was doing and talking to people about what I was doing. And a friend said to me, this is a business. People would pay for it. People need this. This is needed. And then I kind of looked up and around at the way that doctoral education, at least in the United States, is largely provided and realized it can be great if you have a great advisor, but for a lot of people, it's really, really challenging. And no one has taught them very straightforward, basic things they can do to make it better. You're just sort of expected to know how to do it without really being trained and understanding how to work with a psychological experience that's likely to unfold. How do you manage that and be able to progress your work?
Yeah. In the introduction to your book, I was reading that there's quite I think a very relatable set of experiences around procrastinating with, I think it was reality TV, a particular reality TV show.
I used to binge watch before that was a thing because MTV used to do these real world, one of the original reality shows, real world marathons. And it was commercials. I watched it on MTV. We're still there. It wasn't like streaming, but I would watch one episode after the other and tell myself, okay, you're going to start your work. Okay, one more episode and then we'll start our work.
And what were your kind of insights that you realized at the time? You described quite vividly how one day in particular you kind of realized, this isn't just the lure of the TV. There's some kind of
something else going on.
Reasons going on here.
Yeah. Well, I specifically remember I lived in a basement apartment. Not a great apartment. I was a grad student and I'm walking down the hall toward the fridge and recognizing that I had no memory of making a conscious choice to get up from the desk and leave. I don't know what I would have done if I had had social media and an iPhone in grad school. I did not. No one had cell phones when I was in grad school. And just this realization of that, like when things get hard, the way that my dominant coping strategy, when faced with the uncertainty, the ambiguity, the fear that maybe I was never going to be able to figure this out, the way that I was coping with those emotions and body sensations was avoidance. And I went on later to learn from an approach called acceptance and commitment therapy that I'm a big fan of, that what it is, it's experiential avoidance, right? I'm avoiding the inner content of thoughts, emotions, and sensations that I don't like, that are uncomfortable for me. And so therefore I avoid the thing I associate with those emotions and sensations, the work. And that the only way the work was going to get done is if I showed up and did it. And I didn't have near as much insight as I now have. I had enough to break through a layer of avoidance and procrastination. And it's not that I still procrastinate to this day. I just would never let it go on for that long. I have a lot more tools now,
Yeah.
And if you're a listener, by the way, right now, who is thinking, I've tried to break through my procrastination for so long, I don't think I can. You can. It's completely possible. And the number one thing that's going to be required is for you to be kind to what you find inside. So, we can talk more about that, but
Yeah.
turning towards yourself with kindness is the number one step to taming procrastination.
That's a beautiful encouragement. Thank you for sharing that, and a little of your own story too. That's, I'm sure, very, very relatable for lots of us. I think it's really interesting, this point about, so often it's our kind of feelings towards our work and about ourselves and our capabilities, or perhaps perceived lack of capability that can so often be those triggers for procrastination. I wonder if maybe you could talk to us a little bit more about some of the things that you see students coming to you, either turning up at some of your sessions or in your workshops. What are kind of some of the patterns you see in terms of challenges people are facing when it comes to working on their dissertations?
There's so many. Let me figure out where to start. Okay. I think one of the fundamental challenges that I see that's going on with people is really the way that we've all kind of gotten programmed into believing, in a sense, that we have to perform well on demand. And we are not actually capable in an academic arena of performing well on demand without an enormous amount of practice, rehearsal, engagement, study. There are people who have been studying the same field of research for 20, 30, 40 years. Yeah, they can sit down and write a literature review in a weekend because they've logged the hours, they have mastery, But when you're a student, it's really important to remember, I am a student. I'm doing things while not knowing how to do them. So I think that a very common pattern is that people work with standards for the quantity and quality of work they expect themselves to accomplish in a given time frame that are not realistic and are the reason that you're not working effectively. Because you always feel like a failure because you've set yourself up to attempt to attain something that's actually unattainable, given where you are in your developmental trajectory with the writing, with the studying, with whatever you're doing. I also think people have a really common pattern that's creating a lot of interference for people is how much their inner critic is in charge, how much their inner critic is being believed. Oh, this isn't coming easy to you. That's because you're not smart enough. You didn't get anything done yesterday. That's because you're just so lazy. So the inner critic starts to be believed and it is paralyzing. So learning to soften our relationship with the inner critic, where the inner critic is allowed to speak as a part of you that has an opinion, that's trying to protect you, but it's not taken as truth. And that takes practice. I think a lot of people also this is a really common pattern, that it's easy to not see that you're doing this. There's this feeling of like, I have to always be making good use of time. I need to be on. I need to be progressing my work always. And that's actually not realistic. We're not going to work for 8 hours a day on a dissertation, for example, even though we think we can or that we should. So we live in a culture of like urgency and act now, buy now, hurry up, get it done, meet the deadline. There's so much intensity and pressure that people don't realize that they don't have to buy into that. That's something that exists in the culture. We can decide, I'm not going to be so pressured and rushing. So it's the moving quickly with urgency. To be able to study and retain information or to progress a section in a dissertation, for example, if you think about it from the point of view of the work is waiting for you to come and make quality contact with it. And you can't make quality contact if you're moving too quickly and there's too much pressure. And I'll give you a metaphor. If you drive a car fast with overinflated tires, it's dangerous. You can have a blowout. It's less fuel efficient. It wears out the tires unevenly. If you want to study in an effective way, if you want to be able to write, or really, and honestly, this is relevant to any kind of work that people do. The work is waiting for you to show up and make quality, meaningful contact with it. So I think people haven't learned. No one teaches this to you in college or grad school or high school. I mean, I think we should be teaching this from kindergarten on up, which is that the way that we learn and that we do quality work is by ongoingly creating conditions in which we can successfully make contact with our work, meaningful contact, quality contact, not rushing, right? Not going too slow, but not going too fast, not engaging with it with standards that are completely unreasonable. How do I make quality contact? Okay, and the last thing I'll say, and these aren't really exactly patterns, but I'm just pointing out like common issues that people can't see they have. I'm going to tell you two things. And these are, I would call these things back to basic practices for people. This is back to basics. If things are not going well in your study, in your writing, in your work, these are things that you can do over and over and over again that will help. Number one is get clarity. If you write down in your planner, work on chapter 1, study this book, that means do nothing. It means watch Netflix. It's totally unclear what you're supposed to be doing. When you're moving into a work session, and I think this is a really common reason people don't transition effectively. They say, oh, I'm going to study between 10 and noon. And next thing you know, it's 10:45 and all you did was watch TikToks. When you don't successfully transition into the work, very often a key reason is because there wasn't crystal clarity about what you are and are not doing. So get out a piece of paper before your work sessions and write down, I am doing, list out what you're doing. Then you write down, I am not doing, scrolling on my phone, checking my email, right? So that your system knows, it's kind of like you're cleaning off the windshield in the car so you can see where you're going. If you don't have clarity about what to do and what not to do, it's not really possible to make meaningful contact with the work, because what are you making contact with? You don't know. Number two is to align your environment with the work that you say you're going to do. If I say I'm working on a particular project, maybe I could close down or should close down excess tabs that are open that distract me and have me go off in all kinds of directions other than the thing that I say I'm choosing to do. So a really great way to become sort of a better student is to make it a priority that once you know what you're doing, that you curate your physical and digital environment so that the things that you need to do that work are readily available, and things that tend to distract you and pull you in other directions are closed down. The phone is in the other room. Sounds and notifications are turned off. Email is closed. Shut down unnecessary tabs. This also means that we have to create some kind of logical organizational system where we can keep track of articles, websites, documents, where there's a logical way they're organized. And even though it takes time, it's worth stepping back and doing that. So the last thing I'd say, I think a really common pattern is that people don't have a sufficient infrastructure, meaning planning and environment, that are like a solid plan and an environment that supports that plan. That's not in place. There's not an infrastructure. So there's not an infrastructure. So there's very little clarity about what to do when. There's not a rhythm and a routine. And when there isn't structure, people will leave their well-being out. They won't take care of themselves because you feel like you have to always be making good use of time and working all the time. And when you start to create an infrastructure, you can create a world for yourself where productivity and well-being coexist.
Fantastic. Well, gosh, there's so many things in there. And thank you for sharing all of that. That's wonderful. So I guess just to kind of synthesize a couple of the themes that I felt like I was hearing. So I think there's a kind of a theme of patience running through quite a bit you were saying on, for listeners, Dr. Alison is nodding. So a theme of patience running through quite a bit of some of the things you were saying about kind of mindset, which I think is really nice. So, I think it was through the piece about unrealistic standards. be patient, take on what you can at a time, be realistic about it. There's a point about patience in terms of that supervisor or that advisor that might be able to do the literature review in a weekend. You can't do that yet at your stage. It's going to take you longer. We need the patience. And then also that patience with, when we're finding things hard, when we're finding things rough going, not every day is going to be smooth and super productive and bam, 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 bush. You're going to have those days where you're sitting and struggling. And I guess cultivating that kind of comfort with being uncomfortable and leaning into that intellectual struggle.
Yeah.
I want to come back to some of the bits about planning in a moment, because I'm really interested to kind of hear your thoughts on some of those kind of planning systems. But yeah, I guess just on that bit about struggle, because I think that's such a big part of so many people's experience, with dissertations and with other forms of academic endeavor. Do you have any advice for, I guess, that cultivating that, ability to kind of sit and persevere and wrestle with things when they are a bit hard? Any kind of thoughts for us on that point?
Well, I think a big reason that we get kind of trapped in that struggle is because we don't know that we're not the only ones having it. It feels shameful. Like, why am I struggling with this so much? Like, I came here to learn, or, I'm doing this for my career. This is important to me. It's really important, I would say, for anyone who is studying, writing, doing things that are an intellectual, cognitive, and in some ways, I would say also, it's like a stretch. This is a stretch for me, is to remember that is not a verdict on your intelligence. I think it's really important. Well, first, I want to talk a little bit about growth mindset, and then I'm going to talk about something I've learned in all this co-working.
Great.
Everyone, your potential is unknown. Your capacity to learn and grow is unending, even well into life. The fact that you have to put in a lot of effort and that some things feel like it really took a lot to learn it, but you learned it, that's not because you're not smart. That's because that's what it took for the particular way that you're wired up. We all have things that come easier to us, and we have things that are much more challenging for us, and it's easy to compare yourself to other people where it seems like they're learning or doing it faster. It's coming easier to them. It might be. That's okay. We are neurodivergent. Our brains work differently. So just to remind yourself, I can learn. And someone in our co-working community said something that has always stayed with me, which is, it always feels impossible until it doesn't anymore. And this is someone who was getting a PhD in physics, like super challenging, highly intelligent human. It always feels impossible until it doesn't anymore. To remind yourself of that. This discomfort I have, it's uncomfortable, but it's a sign that I'm stretching myself. I'm going to doubt myself. I once saw an interview with Nicole Kidman and Julianne Moore, and they both shared the same fear they had, that every film that they were hired to do, that was the last time they were ever going to be hired. We have this thing where, like, the jig is going to be up. This is going to finally expose me as the fraud that I am. Everyone feels that way in some way or another. It's normal. So if you can connect with other students where you can talk candidly about your experience, this is something we provide in our co-working community, that can make a huge difference. Okay, and the second thing is, this is a really important daily practice, everyone. All day long, this is another back to basics practice. Find out what version of you has shown up to study or to write or to crunch numbers, whatever the task is. What version of you showed up? Let's say I'm doing some writing for a paper, a dissertation. I've got a particular section I want to get in there and do some initial drafting. I'm a little hesitant because I haven't written it yet, and I know it's going to come out really rough. It would be really helpful if I wrote that down, I clarified that's my plan, work on, section X. As I'm moving into my work, it's a good idea to notice what version of me has shown up to do this work I previously planned. Am I irritable? Am I relaxed? Am I grounded? Am I focused? I feel ready to go. Is there the energy of an argument I had with somebody still in my body? Did I sleep funny and my neck is tight? Am I thirsty? Let me check in and see how this human, including the fact that you're a biological being, is doing. That's really good for you to know. One of the reasons that we're often ineffective in our work sessions is because we didn't notice that we weren't actually compatible with doing the thing we planned to do. What you and your work are in some kind of relationship with each other that's dynamically changing, where you're more or less compatible with doing the work. If you find out that you're not compatible, that is not a problem. It's completely normal. The version of us who shows up to work is usually different than the version we imagined when we made the work plan. That's okay. Let's find out how we are and what do I need to be able to go in and do that work? Or maybe do I need a sandwich, right?
Mm.
Do I need some deep breathing? Do I need to do a little bit of journaling and reframing some negative thoughts? Do I need to remind myself why this matters to me? We could also allow ourselves to start to think about, how do I want to feel at the end of the workday? Ooh, okay. Well, if I want to feel that way, how would I behave? These are all things that we can do to upgrade the version of us who's present to enhance our compatibility with the work. And sometimes, no matter what you do, you're not compatible. Are you compatible with something else that you could pivot to and do instead? Great, go do that. That might then help you be compatible with the thing that you weren't compatible with. So it could just make a huge difference to recognize that if you can learn to work with the version of you who's present and really actively care for, be compassionate toward the version of you who's present, you can unlock almost every single problem or difficulty that someone would have with studying or writing.
Yeah, I think one of the things that I wish I'd learned a lot sooner is this kind of point about the growth mindset, and this idea that we can grow, and just because we're finding something hard doesn't mean we can't do it and we're not capable. And if anything, kind of flipping the script on that, like those are the bits that help us grow the fastest. By struggling, by wrestling with that difficulty, by overcoming. That's the sort of always the fastest path to growth, rather than doing the bits you already find easy and it's really comfortable. And I didn't know that as an undergraduate when I was struggling with a physics course, and I've talked about that on the podcast before. And I think the bit about choosing what version of you shows up is really interesting too. I mean, again, kind of going back to my own university days, what I remember putting one of the tasks that was sent my way, which I was most daunted by, because I'm naturally a little bit introverted, and speaking up in class is not kind of my natural thing. And there's one course I had in my final year where there was a component of your assessed final grade, the final degree grade you're awarded by the university. For this class, a component was based on your in-class contributions. My understanding is that's maybe a little bit more common in North America, but it's pretty unusual in the UK. And I thought, oh my gosh, there's a class of like 60, 70 people. It's a big room. And you've only got 2-hour lectures. And we had 8 of these things. So like 16 hours. And there's like 66 other people in the room. And, you've got to speak up and make your contributions count. And I was daunted by that. And one of the things I did was I put you had to bring a name tag along, so a little name card to sit on your desk so that the lecturer knew who was saying what and could attribute the comments to the names and grade you. And I just remember putting a 1 in front of my name. So I put 1, William Wadsworth. The lecturer probably never thought anything of it. But for me, that was a reminder that I was looking for a first-class degree, a top degree grade you can get. And I was going to show up as if I was the version of me that was, the first-class student. And, that really did kind of, I think, make me show up differently and better than if I'd just kind of not done that little bit of priming. And it ultimately did really well. I got a really good compliment from the lecturer at the end of it and a really good grade for the class. And I think a big part of that was just me choosing to show up as if I was the sort of person that was going to do really well from that component, even though it was definitely something that I was not comfortable with.
I really love what you're saying, and you're pointing out something really important to your listeners, which is we have choices. We actually have far more choices than we realize. And the choice you made to say, I'm going to step into this role of being like a top student. You didn't know how to do that. It's almost like you're pretending. You are mad. And by the way, everyone, this is something everyone can do to make things better. Use your imagination, especially if you're someone who worries a lot. That is good news because it means you have a very vivid imagination. We want to see if we can bypass the worrying about things that could happen, using your imagination to imagine things happening that you don't want to have happen, because that's really a misuse of our imagination. To start imagining yourself working effectively. What's it like? What do you do to set yourself up to work effectively? How do you move into your work? How do you sustain your attention and focus in the direction you want it to go? How do you deal with disruptions? How do you appreciate and acknowledge yourself? How do you feel? Imagine, how do you want to feel as you work and at the end of the work? Using your imagination in this way is what makes it possible to do what you did.
Talking of imagining and planning, I guess, a little bit more specifically, I really like how you can sometimes characterize the job of a grad student as being kind of wearing these two hats. One, the person that's actually doing the research and the academic work. And then the other hat is the person that's project managing that whole process.
Yeah.
If you were to give us kind of just a little bit of a taste of what we want to be doing, what that inner project manager wants to be doing, how does that inner project manager do his or her job well?
Yes.
Yeah. How do we think about things in terms of goal setting, how specific to be, timelines, those kind of things? What would be some of the kind of starter kit advice you might give us?
I think that everyone needs planning. And I think about it as like you're creating an infrastructure. You're creating the bridges and roads. Fundamentally, the planning is necessary because we have to create clarity for ourselves. The goal of planning in my mind is to support ourselves to be able to experience productivity and well-being. And to have productivity and well-being coexist, we have to be able to make quality, meaningful contact with our work. We have to be able to actually take our energy, our attention, our focus, our brains, right? Like whatever it is that we're bringing to the work, we have to be able to take what we have and bring it to the work. So also, if you don't have a plan and you don't have clarity about what you're doing, then it's really hard to make that compatibility assessment of, is the version of me who's here right now compatible with doing the thing, because you don't know what you're doing. And it's really unkind to yourself to operate without a plan, and incredibly inefficient. And we're way more vulnerable to just be kind of chronically switch tasking through the day, where we're touching lots of things, but we're not really getting anything meaningful done. The truth is, studying for exams, really learning and material, writing and doing a master's thesis, a dissertation, any kind of challenging academic work requires sustained focus and attention. We have to be able to concentrate and focus. And so we have to create conditions in which we can concentrate and focus, make meaningful contact with our work. And that comes through planning. So I think that with planning, you kind of need to have, it's almost like a camera lens, where you have to be able to zoom out and see the bigger picture. And you also have to then be able to zoom in and see, what am I doing in the next hour? And there has to be the capacity to move in both directions. So first of all, I would invite all of your listeners to first zoom out. Unless your instinct is you want to start with the zooming in, sometimes there's a reason why that would make sense. But for most of us, it'd be good if we zoomed out and we thought about, what are the different areas of my life that I need and want to give attention to? Your studying, your writing, your graduate work, all that, those are areas of life. It's an area of life. If you're studying for an exam, that exam is an area of your life that's currently active. If you're doing a dissertation, that's an area of life that probably has sub areas like methods, data collection, etc. You're documenting the different domains of life: finance, life administration, well-being, family. If you have a job that you're doing, like, you're listing out. And the reason I'm saying that we want to zoom out and look at the whole of life is that you can't have well-being and productivity coexist if we don't holistically zoom out. And then from there, list out what you need to do so that it's no longer in your brain. If your brain is the primary storage mechanism for figuring out when to do what, it is going to be really hard to make quality contact with the work. So getting that out of your brain into like a Google Doc or on paper where you can see it, then week to week, you go and you choose out of all the things that are on that life inventory, which does need to be updated from time to time. And don't panic if you feel really anxious after you make the life inventory. That's a normal side effect. It will dissipate. What you're learning to do is you're learning to, after you make your life inventory, to clarify your priorities of what am I doing this week? You can choose a longer or shorter time frame, but for most people, picking out a set of priorities of what absolutely has to be done. Sometimes we have deadlines or something's coming up. What has to be done this week? What are key goals, priorities you have? Is there something that if you did it this week is going to set you up well for future weeks? That's a good consideration. What would bring you relief if you got it done in the next 7 days? So you're narrowing down the field to what am I committing I'm going to do this week? And then you need to turn that into a day-to-day plan. What am I doing Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, etc.? Building in time for rest and eating and being a human. Acknowledging that quality contact with work can only happen for so long, and then I have to recover from it. Just like you wouldn't train for the Olympics and run 24 hours a day. You would have resting and stretching and massage and nutrition, all kinds of things in addition to the act of running. And then once you've figured out what you're doing day to day, you're basically narrowing down the priorities and then breaking down the priorities for the week into when am I doing what during the week. By the way, everybody, schedule time for email. Email is work. And many of us treat it like this thing we're going to do in the cracks of the day.
Right.
And we end up spending the whole day on our inbox because it's not controlled. Also, unsubscribe. Most of us subscribe to way too much.
Except study strategy emails, which are great, obviously.
Yeah, don't do that. No, but I mean, like you don't need to know that there's a sale at the local store. Yeah. You'll spend less money. So once you've figured out that day-to-day plan, then what I recommend is every 24 hours, end your day by looking at your plan and evaluating, did I do what I said I was going to do? We're not inviting your inner critic to this party, by the way. Not invited. We're just observing. I like to say we are observing and not judging. And when we observe and when we start to observe more and judge less, something really cool happens. You start to become more experimental in your approach, and then you make discoveries about how you work effectively. But once you have that plan in place, when you're assessing, okay, what I get done, what I didn't get done, what didn't I finish, how am I readjusting the plan for tomorrow? Let me readjust it. And then do that alignment of your environment. Given what you're doing tomorrow, close down the tabs, open up the right tabs, find the password, print the document that you want to edit on paper with. Get the exam study prep book out to the right page. Because now what you're doing is you are kind of greatly increasing the odds that you're going to be compatible, because now you don't have to find what you need to do the work. When you have to find things to do things, it creates like a wall of resistance around the work that wouldn't be there if you had, it's like you're parking the car on a downhill slope. And then I want to say one last thing about environmental alignment. Mondays are hard days for a lot of us. On Sunday, pick out your outfit for Monday. Grab the towels and hang them over the edge of the shower. Maybe prep your lunch if you're not going to be home for lunch. Get the coffee pot ready. Just do a few things that take the edge off. If you have particular days that are hard days for you, some environmental alignment the day before can be an incredible act of kindness to the future you that takes the edge off and increases the odds that you're going to be available to make contact with your work.
So many lovely pieces of advice. I've been nodding along furiously, my end. So many really, really nice pieces of advice. Thank you for being so generous with it all. Alison, just before we wrap up, where would people go if we want to go a little deeper and find out more about the work you do?
Oh, well, there's a number of different ways. I do post videos on YouTube, TikTok, and Instagram, and even Facebook, all under our business name, The Academic Writers Space. And you can find us there and follow along. We also are a co-working community. We're a membership community. It's kind of like an academic productivity gym. We are students in a wide range of fields. People could come there and study for exams. They could write manuscripts, papers. We have professors, postdocs. We have an international community. Right now, our members are covering 22 hours of the globe. It's pretty incredible. Wow. We are an American company, so we have more sessions available for people in North America than other parts of the world. But we do have quite a few European folks as well, and all the way to beyond Australia, actually. And we are a co-working community where together as a community, we are learning how to work in a way that works. So if you are interested, even just coming and experiencing something for free, anybody can sign up for 2 entire free weeks of co-working without any obligation to make a purchase or continue beyond. But you will actually be in session with me. And I will share my heart and my, deepest wisdom about how we can navigate through the challenges and so that we're not so alone with it. I would just close on one final note. I think one of the things that we really, really need to be able to study effectively, to engage with academic work effectively, is we need community. We need each other. Many of us are missing the co-regulation that would so benefit us, because asking us all to regulate our own nervous systems by ourselves, particularly here on planet Earth in 2025, that's a really tall order. The way that we're going to get through this chapter of humanity that we're in right now is going to be with community. And we need it. We need it. When you're vulnerable, which you are as a student, that's vulnerable. We need each other. We need to feel each other's heart energy and be held in compassion and be reminded to hold ourselves in compassion too.
Amen to that. And Alison, thank you so much for coming and being so generous with your wisdom and your heart. It's been a really, really wonderful conversation, and I'm so excited to share with people. Thank you so much once again, and we'll talk soon.
Oh, thank you so much. A pleasure.
And since recording this interview with Dr. Alison, she very kindly invited me to join for a few academic writers space co-working sessions. And it's really wonderful. Honestly, like it's one of the nicest things I've done in quite a while, actually, in terms of kind of productivity and community and just feeling really good about work. And obviously, I'm not working on a dissertation or a thesis like most of the people in the academic writer space, but I brought along some of the work I'm doing as exam study expert. And honestly, looking back at the past few weeks, I think some of the most important work I've done was in that afternoon I joined for the academic writer space. It's just such a beautiful vibe. It's just such a beautiful kind of space that Alison and her team has created. And I'd really encourage anyone to just give it a try and try it out and see how you like it. Alison's not paying me to say this or anything. I'm not getting any kickback or anything. I'm just saying it as a heartfelt recommendation because I really enjoyed it and I will definitely be back for more myself. So thank you once again for tuning in today. I hope you've got some useful practical takeaways from this conversation to help you move forward. Next week, we'll be joined by Dr. Alex Hibble, who is lecturer in study skills at Oxford University, getting into the nitty-gritty of how to actually do your writing really well. So we break down step by step some of the key steps in the process when you're working on whether it's that kind of week-to-week assignment essay at university or whether it's that big kind of dissertation, and talk about how you can optimize how you approach each step in the process for best results. Again, some really useful practical strategies in that, particularly if you're working on university level work. If you're not working on university level writing at this stage, then it's a really nice taste for what to expect from one of the real top teachers in that space at the University of Oxford. So thank you so much once again for listening today, and I would look forward to seeing you again very soon. Wishing you every success in your studies in the meantime.
Wasn't that wonderful? If you're feeling inspired, why not leave us a rating and a review in your podcast app? It would make our day. Thanks again for listening, and see you soon.